Think of a place you want to be, a place you belong. It's a step up, a step forward, a statement, a strategy. It's where dreams take flight, where the fire burns hot, more than 50 years strong but built for today. Focus on the horizon of tomorrow. Inclusion, equity, citizenship, the real world and our world. We think harder, reach higher, live local, study global. We unlock doors and change the direction of our minds. Education without borders, global citizenship, equity, and social inclusion are the values. From hundreds of cultures and 80 languages, we stand together, focus on a stronger future. We live to laugh, we love to play. We rise with the sun and reach for the stars. From court case to aerospace, searching and researching. We break the mold and find a better way. It's a commitment to ourselves and a promise to others. Centennial, you belong.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for our financial aid webinar. My name's Aaron, and I'm with the student recruitment team. Main purpose of my job is to assist students in deciding what programs they'd like to take at Centennial, and I help them kind of do their research so they can determine what's needed to get into programs and how much programs are going to cost. I have JP with me this evening. He's from our financial aid team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is JP Lunaria. I'm the Senior Financial Aid Records Officer at Centennial College. I mostly do the OSAP day-to-day operations and as well as appeals at Progress Campus, and if you have any issues with cost codes. What I love about Centennial is I was once an OSAP recipient and at the same time graduated from the Business Administration Accounting here at Centennial, and I'm willing to, I want to be able to assist our students to ease their financial difficulties here at Centennial.
Great. Thank you so much for coming with us this evening to be here to be the content expert to answer some of the frequently asked questions that we get on the regular. Before we get started and we go to some of the different questions that we're going to have from some of the audience members, we're going to go over a couple of key things, just highlight some very high-level areas that might answer some of those questions right off of the bat. So one of the things that we really like to make sure that students do is plan for their education, and they can do that when they're speaking with a recruiter like myself and make sure that they're getting all of the details about their education. So that would include things like the cost of their program, when things are offered, and with that planning, there's going to be a lot of different options that they have, determining different expenses, book costs, things of that nature. So we've got a couple of really great helpful tips to help you in your planning stage. So some of those things are going to be to determine and to organize, investigate, which is definitely what you want to do. You want to make sure you have a lot of those answers, and then apply, and then review. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail just now with some of those different areas. So when I say determine, I mean, determine your full expenses, things like tuitions, books, cost of living, any transportation that you might be required. Are you going to live on campus? Are you going to live off campus? Because all of these things are going to impact what you're going to have to provide by way of payment for school, and that's going to impact what program you're going to take and potentially what school that you're going to choose. We also want to make sure that you organize all of your resources and you have everything together at the start of the academic year, because there's nothing that's going to cause more difficulty and stress in being unprepared. So you don't want to get to school, have you on the first day being hit with a couple of costs that you might not have associated or things that you might not have anticipated. And then make sure that you're investigating all of the different funding options, things like scholarships and government loans and grant programs. If you wanted to go with a bank loan, you can do that as well. And then all of the different work options that are available on campus so you can earn while you learn. We hire work study students. You can take advantage of a co-op program that might have a fully paid work term associated with it. You can work in a variety of different capacities on or off campus that's going to help you fund your particular college journey. And then we want to make sure that you're going to be getting the right information to apply for different grants and scholarships. So we're going to touch on that in this webinar as well, how you can apply for different government grant programs, how you can, and timelines, because timelines are really, really important, and making sure that you meet those deadlines, because we don't want anybody to be scrambling at the last minute to get everything together. And then essentially make sure that you review all of your resources and adjust your educational and living expenses to be within those available resources, because you don't want to live beyond your means, particularly while you're in school. So some of the different things that are available to help you while you're in school, things like scholarships that are typically based on academics. So your academic merit would determine some of the different sources of funding that you might potentially get. Bursaries and grants are typically an award for a student with financial need, and some also might have some financial requirements in an application process associated with them. Things like loans, and that make up a significant amount of student aid that's offered in the province, and typically they could be provided, like I said, by a bank or by the government, for example, the Ontario Student Assistance Program. And then other awards, so anything that doesn't fit any of the other categories that we've kind of touched on before. So the interesting thing about a lot of these, some of these are free and you don't have to pay them back. So things like scholarships, bursaries, grants, and other awards, they fall into the free category, which is a really great thing to hear for a potential student because it means that there's not a whole lot of stress associated with those. But when we talk about loans, there is an expectation to have those paid back. And I think in the conversation this evening, JP is going to kind of talk about some of those different repayment things that come along with things like OSAP or bank loans. So just so you guys know, at Centennial, we offer over $3 million dedicated to our students that currently study with Centennial by way of different grants and bursaries and different opportunities that are for sources of funding that you don't have to pay back. And we have a really great program called Door-Rated Dollars, and that's going to be just a quick questionnaire that you have to fill out, and it'll be determining your financial need, the different programs that you're in, and some information about yourself. But for those particular, this particular program, you will actually have to be a Centennial College student before you look at applying. And then there's a lot of other really great resources that are available to students across the province that you can apply to before you determine what school that you're going to. I highly recommend that you make sure that you Google free money for students in the province of Ontario, because there's some really great additional resources that are available as well. And then things like OSAP. So just going over some of the different things that you need to be eligible for OSAP. Did you want to touch on some of those, JP?
No, you're actually doing great, but I just want to add, so to be eligible for OSAP, you need to be a Canadian resident, either a protected person or permanent resident or Canadian citizen. You have to be an Ontario resident to take advantage of both the federal and the provincial loans and grants of the OSAP, and attending an OSAP-approved program and school. And also, it must be 12 weeks in length.
At a minimum.
At a minimum.
Right.
Yeah,
Great.
for the program.
So some of the questions that we could potentially have, what are the types of financial aid that are made available to students? We kind of touched on some of those things before. And just going into some of the things with regards to OSAP, some of the questions that I see often on the road, can I get OSAP if I'm a part-time student?
Yes, absolutely. As long as what we mentioned is the program approved for OSAP, you can definitely get it as long as you meet minimum requirements of 20% and above to be eligible for part-time OSAP.
Fantastic. So I don't know if we have any other questions that are coming through right now, but some of the other questions that I see quite often, how long does it take to get approved for OSAP? Like, when should students be applying for OSAP? Can they do that before they start their program, after they start their program? What's the ideal time frame?
So technically, as long as the application is available to students, they can go in and apply for that specific academic year. If they're attending September or in the summer or January, you can apply even before you even applied through your Ontario College's application or university applications.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much. So we just had a question come through is, can I use my student loan to cover things like living expenses? So would that cover like room and board, rental property, or living in residence?
Absolutely. So anything in excess of any available funds you receive from your OSAP that's been covered for your tuition, you can use it to anything else. Now, that doesn't mean that the living allowance, the OSAP, any extension from that might not be enough for it. Remember that OSAP is a financial aid. It's not the source of the actual income. Yep.
Fantastic. So another question that we have coming through right now is, what happens after I submit my OSAP application? Is it instantaneous? Am I going to get notifications right away? Am I going to have to log in?
Yes. So after you submit it, 3 days after that, you'll need to provide documents. So first is the Master of Student Financial Aid Agreement if this is your first time attending Centennial College. Second, there are other supporting documentations depending on your marital status, on your other student requirements for the program, or parental information. You would have to submit that either online or in person, whatever's more convenient for you.
Great. So what happens if somebody wants to change programs? Is that going to affect their loan, or?
Yes, we always advise our students that before you do something in your to the school, you need to speak to us if you're under OSAP. In that way, we can see any repercussions that might happen to your OSAP loans or grants.
Okay, so that will impact, and then you just have to make
Definitely.
sure that you communicate back with the financial aid department and OSAP as well.
Definitely.
Okay, great. So one of the other questions that's coming in right now is extra funding for students with disabilities. Is this something that they have to outline as far as grant funding? Would they apply through the OSAP application, or would this be a separate application that they would have to process?
We do have a separate application for that. We call it Bursary for Students with Disability. Now, for that one, it's also based on financial need, that you need to be able to have an OSAP application for us to determine that you have a financial need, and then from there we will check if you can be entitled for both the federal and provincial grant. Maximum right now is $22,000 for that, $2,000 coming from the provincial side, and then $20,000 coming from the federal side. But for that one, yes, there's a form, and your family physician or our call center over here at Centennial, they might be able to help you with that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot of high school students, and they talk about the OSAP application quite often, and we notice that there is a large amount of their parents' financial information that has to go into this particular application. So we often get either students or parents asking, are the parents responsible to repay that student's financial aid loan?
Wow, that was a nice question. I would love my parents to pay for my loan, but coming out of high school, you need to understand that you're becoming an adult. That's what college is for. You need to learn to be financially responsible now, as well as for your education. Now, your parents, we do check, OSAP check the parental income, but when you're paying your loan, you're the sole responsible for any loans that you have.
Gotcha. So when a parent signs on and they provide that information to OSAP, they're not essentially becoming a co-signer. So
No.
if you default on your payments, they're not going to go after your parents for that.
Exactly. No, not at all.
Awesome. So what happens if somebody's denied OSAP? What if they do the whole process of application and they find out that there's no funding available for them through that particular channel?
Well, before we actually deny the students, we want to say we always wanted to check what happened. What was the reason for the denial? Because there's a lot of reason that maybe they just filled out the information wrong, and we want to correct that. Or maybe we have some scholarships or bursaries that they might be able to take advantage of. So we don't just say, oh, sorry, there's no financial assistance for you. We have other things like what you mentioned from your slides. There are other rewards that you can get from the school, academic and nomination scholarships here.
Fantastic. And then things like bank loans. So you can apply for like a student line of credit.
Also,
I always just encourage that students that are looking at that as an option, make sure that you read all of the fine print when you go to a bank. What are their repayment terms? What's the interest rate that you're signing on for? And how you can access that funding while you're going to school. And is that something that you want to do? So there are other options for students to gain funding for
There are
school.
also other government assistance like ODSP or Ontario Works, if you want to take advantage of that, or EI.
Fantastic. Awesome. So there's lots of different coverage and
That's
lots of
right.
different funding options available for students that are looking to access education in the province of Ontario. So another question that's just come through is, should I wait until the first week of school to apply for OSAP?
We wouldn't suggest that. And the reason for that is there is some processing time, and if you wait within the first week of school, you're probably going to be behind other people too, and the lineups at the front while you're trying to figure out where's your classroom and all that. You want to be settled before you start your school.
Okay, great.
So we always advise, plan ahead, always apply from the beginning before you start, and then submit all the supporting documentation before the semester begins.
Great. Now, do you have to have an offer before you apply to OSAP? So do you have to confirm an offer to Centennial before you start applying to things like OSAP?
No, not at all. You can apply as soon as possible, as long as the application is available online.
Great. So another question that just came in, if I live outside of the province, if I live outside of Ontario, can I apply for financial aid?
Yes. So what we look for when you apply outside of Ontario is your residency. Now, if you're still considered as an Ontario resident, then yes, you can still be eligible for OSAP. But if your residency changed within the 12 months, you're going to have to apply to that student aid from whichever province you went to.
Great.
Yeah.
So there are other sources of funding
right.
in your home province that would allow you the opportunity to come to Ontario to study.
Depending on the residency status.
Gotcha. And in the event that a student living in Ontario wanted to apply to a school outside of Ontario, it would be the same.
They can still get one from Ontario if they live. Yeah.
Fantastic. So when can I start making payments on my OSAP? Do I have to wait until I graduate? Do I have to wait until a couple months after I graduate when I get employed? What's the process for repaying your OSAP?
You have the option of repaying it. It's really up to you how you want to manage your loan. You can start paying off anytime, but keep in mind that from the time that you last attended school full-time, that's when the interest starts accumulating. So if you don't want that, then you can start paying off now. Let's say, oh, you feel like you have extra money right now. Why not just put in a little, maybe $100 here and there just to assist you with those loans?
Fantastic. It's always good to
Exactly.
jump on it as early
Be
as possible,
proactive on
right?
this, yeah.
Absolutely. So another question that's just come through is, where can I find information on financial planning for my education? Do we have sources of information or people that potential students can sit down and speak with to kind of understand how they can plan for their education if they're looking at a couple years out? They might want to save some money, or how they can kind of budget and how they can do things while they're in school.
Yeah, so for those students that already have access to our My Centennial, we do have it under our financial services tab, all the information about budgeting or how they can plan for this OSAP or any other financial aid. We have all that in there, financial services. But if you don't have access, you can always try to go to the canada.ca website under the finances section of it, and you will be able to see all this information.
Awesome. So there are so many resources available. And in the event that they're not currently a Centennial student, if they're looking at doing some pre-planning, they can look up some sources online and things like that as well. So there's definitely a lot of options out there for them.
That's
Great.
right.
It's just a little bit of initiative. You got to kind of look for some of those details. And if you're thinking about financial planning, that's the first step. You've already kind of hit that first step, and it's great because you want to put together a really solid plan to make sure that you're not overspending or you're not undervaluing the different costs that are going to come up. Great. So another question is, bursaries and scholarships, are they available to all students? Can anybody apply to bursaries and scholarships?
Bursaries are only available to our domestic students, while scholarships are available to both domestic and international students. Now, I want to point back to the Doorways to Dollars questionnaire. So that's one thing that is important if you want to be a Centennial student. This one, we guide our students with this questionnaire. It's a 20 set of questions in there. So basically, it asks about your personal information, and this kind of helps you. We narrow down all the bursaries and scholarships. We will notify you for anything that you can qualify for. In that way, 3 days before it opens up, you will be able to apply for those.
Great. Does Centennial have any merit-based scholarships?
Yes, we do. I just don't know the actual name, but we do. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
We have a lot of academic scholarships in there. Yeah.
Great. Now, would those be applied automatically based on how a student's performing, or would they have to apply to those particular scholarships?
Now, for this one, the merit ones, if we're talking about the academic ones, depending on the criteria, depending on the program, the GPA, it will be automatically applied as long as they've done the Doorways to Dollars questionnaire.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then anything else that has like a specific requirement, whether it's background, financial information, things like that, then they would have to process an application, and usually that comes with maybe a resume or a cover letter.
So we have nomination scholarships where we do ask for reference letters, and it has specific criteria depending on the program that they applied for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So if I win a scholarship, do you reduce my financial aid package? So if I get grants or bursaries or scholarships, is that going to impact my funding, say, from OSAP?
So any scholarships that you receive from our school, we will have to update your OSAP on that. We will do that on our end. But any scholarships outside of Centennial, you're going to have to update it yourself on your OSAP account or come and speak to one of us, and we'll see what are the implications onto your OSAP. We cannot really say if it will have an impact because, like I said, it will be considered like an income for some, and it has an impact depending on the marital status or the family size.
Great. Now, a lot of students who are working on campus, whether they're working in a work-study position or whether they're working off campus, will their paychecks, if they're working while they're in school, will that affect their OSAP funding for the following or the current year?
So on the OSAP application, be mindful when you're filling out the income information. So as long as for one semester you're not going above 5,200, and then for the 2 semesters 11,400. If you don't go above that, then you'll be fine. But once you go above that, it will definitely have an impact to your OSAP.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So are there jobs available for students on campus?
Yes, we do have a lot of work-study opportunities. Just keep in mind, keep checking our My Centennial page or Centennial website, or if you do know any departments that might have some openings, still come and see them. We have our student association, our department, many opportunities in there.
For work study, now, is that based on like a financial need? Do you have to meet any criteria to become a work study student, or is it open to any students that are looking to gain employment?
Now, for work study, you have to be domestic student. And then for us, what you need to do is, if you're applying from September to April, you have to be registered full-time and make sure that you pass your courses at least 3.0 GPA.
Great. To stay eligible for
To stay eligible.
Fantastic. So let's say, for example, someone's taken an OSAP loan before, but they haven't paid it back yet. Can they still receive OSAP if they're looking to go to school again?
Yes. So as long as the loan was in good standing, they can still get OSAP. Now, if there are any other restrictions on file, then we will have to check that, what caused the restriction, but definitely they can still get it.
Gotcha. So it's situation by situation. It's
Exactly.
very personal kind of application process.
That's correct.
Great. Now, what happens if somebody has an RESP for school? Is that something that they would declare? Is that something that they have to let OSAP know, like the total amount, or just what they're taking out for school at that particular time? What's the process?
The RESP, they don't need to declare that anymore for the 2019-2020 OSAP.
Great.
So moving forward, it's not asked anymore. So
Oh, fantastic. So that won't impact their OSAP
Yep.
application.
They can also take advantage of that at the same time of OSAP.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. So if we have any other questions coming through, will my financial aid funding change after my first year of school?
Could be, yes, that's correct, because cost differs from first year and second year. If you're doing your co-op sometime in the second year, the cost, we will have to adjust for that. Also in the first year, you do have the computer allowance added to it. So all of those impacts the assessment for your OSAP.
Fantastic. And then one other question, just from my own personal experience with OSAP, how are the funds released to students?
So this, after we do a confirmation of enrollment, it will be sent directly to your bank account. Remember the 3 days that I mentioned earlier, the Master of Student Financial Aid Agreement, that's where they would ask you for your bank information. And then from there, the school, once we confirm it, if we see any outstanding balance, we will remit the funds first to the school, and then we'll send, OSAP will send directly the money to their bank account.
Great.
After that.
So tuition's kind of taken care of, fees that
First,
are owed are taken care of first, and then you get the remainder. You don't have to go
Exactly.
out. And then if I'm not mistaken, is it a 60-40 split? So 60% your first semester, 40% your second?
So if they have 2-semester application, yes, it's a 60-40 split.
Awesome.
Yep.
Fantastic. So do you mind giving us a little bit of information about grants and how a student would potentially apply for a federal grant?
Okay, so for the grants, it's automatically assessed. You don't really need to apply. One application will basically allow you to get either loans or grants. Grants, if you just want to keep the grants, just let us know. There's a form for that as well if you want to opt out of the loans. But the application is just one application, and the assessment will give it to you right away.
Great.
Yeah.
So a question that comes up a lot after students do a little bit of digging into OSAP and things like that, and a term that's used a lot is a full course load. So would you mind going into a bit more detail about what a full course load is and what implications that has with an OSAP loan?
Okay. Now, to be eligible for OSAP, we look into the course load percentage. You need to be at least 60% if you don't have permanent disability, or 40% if you do have a permanent disability. Now, a course load differs from one program to the other. We don't go by the number of courses, we go by your billing hours. So keep that in mind. If you decide to withdraw or drop any courses, please come and speak to us first.
Right, and it's a percentage that's attached to that. So
Exactly.
depending on what program you're in and how many credit hours you have to maintain at minimum a 60% of a full course load?
60%, yes.
Okay, so there are some opportunities. If you do feel like you need to drop a class, it's not going to immediately impact, but you don't want to drop too many classes, and you don't want to play around with your schedule too much.
Exactly.
Great. Awesome. Is there anybody on campus who potential students can speak to about budgeting? So sometimes we do find that there's a lot of students who, that's a lot of money going into your bank account all at once. And if you haven't had that amount of money and you haven't had the responsibility, if you're kind of new to this whole thing, is there somebody you can sit down and you can speak with to kind of help determine a budget or help determine the best ways to kind of spend that money moving forward?
We do have our budget information for bursaries. They can talk to us just if anything related to our bursaries or scholarships. Anything outside to that, we're still not rolling out. Maybe next year we might have the financial literacy.
Okay.
Then in that way we can guide students from there.
Great.
Yeah.
And if somebody's taking advantage of things like a student loan from a bank, then you might want to sit down and meet with that financial institution's financial advisors, because they might have some really great tips and tricks for you to help build a budget. So there's lots of resources that are available. Sometimes all you have to do is reach out and ask, or do a little bit of research for sure. Awesome. So how much time do students actually get after graduating before they have to start repaying their loan?
So I would always say it's not about the graduation date, it's about the last time that you attended school.
Okay.
So you have 6 months from there to start paying off your loan. But remember, from the last time that you attended school, the next day interest starts accumulating, both on the federal and the provincial side of it.
Okay.
So it's really up to you. But at the same time, within that 6 months, you can apply for something that they call repayment assistance program. That's through National Student Loans. This one will basically guide you on if you cannot make any certain payments after that 6 months. The government will assist you on paying your loans so that it's not a burden for you. And also, if your income is below 25,000, the government might not even ask for any payments from you.
Great.
And every 6 months, you will have to, it's mandatory for you to keep applying for this.
Gotcha.
It's not an automatic renewal.
Gotcha. One of the things that I quite often find is students, it's almost like they're afraid of OSAP for whatever
Absolutely,
reason that
yeah.
is. And from my own personal experience, I was an OSAP recipient when I went to school. It's super flexible. Sometimes communication is key. So if you feel like you're going to be late on a payment, just speak to them, communicate with them, and it's not going to negatively impact you, as some people might have thought in the past. Would you say that that's the case?
That's true. Yeah, just take advantage of this. There's a lot of opportunities behind this. There's a lot of grants that you can qualify just because you're a resident of Canada. So I would say go for it. The loan, like I said, you can opt out of it. Fill out the grant application form, and then we'll process just the grants. As long as you maintain your good grades and then maintain full time, you should be fine with OSAP.
Awesome. Fantastic. So does Centennial offer a tuition payment plan that would let a potential student pay monthly for their tuition as opposed to a one lump sum, or is there like just a payment plan that we can put together for students?
We do not have a payment plan. What we do have is, if you're an OSAP recipient, so we check if you already applied and you're qualified on the assessment, we can allow you to pay the deposit of $200. In that way, you can register when the registration comes. But once the school starts, that way, when we confirm enrollment, we will pay off from your OSAP whatever the outstanding balance is for
Gotcha.
that semester.
Fair enough. And when students pay a deposit, that gets applied to the balance of their tuition.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Because that does, people ask me that question quite often. It's like, what happens to my deposit? And I was like, well, it's kind of like you're taking that money and it's a placeholder, and then it'll be taken off the balance. So you're going to see that money come back to you when you get your OSAP draw
That's right.
when you start attending school. Awesome. Now, is it still the case that you have to attend your first week of classes before they'll release the funds to you?
No. So what we do is we just check that you already build your timetable, more than 60% percentage course load, and the moment we can confirm enrollment, you should be fine.
Fantastic. Awesome. So how would somebody go about applying for interest relief? Is that an online form? Is it a phone call? Is it an in-person appointment with somebody at the college?
So if students receive OSAP previously and they don't want to take advantage of that the next year, we do have something that we call continuation of interest-free status, if that's what you're talking about.
Okay.
For this one, basically it informs the ministry that you're still attending school full-time. In that way, there's no interest accumulating, and at the same time that you wouldn't have to pay any outstanding loans during that period.
Great. And then let's say, for example, a graduate, so a student who's attended, and they would do the same process. They would just fill out the form online or call.
For this one, it's through the National Student Loan Service Center. This is the application for the repayment assistance program. As long as you qualify, if the government would pay part or maybe all of your outstanding the interest for that month, then they can allow you for that.
Gotcha. Now, what would happen in the event that a student receives their OSAP late for whatever reason, and they're finding it a little bit difficult to manage financially? Would they be able to come in and speak with financial aid to get some assistance?
We will have to look at a lot of things, but yes, definitely they can talk to us. But few things that we want to keep in mind is, why is it taking so late, and how much are they receiving?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So like things like timing of application
Exactly,
and things
yeah.
like that. Now, a couple of times throughout the duration of our chat here, we've referenced things like OSAP and the National Student Loan Service Center. Now, are they the same? Is it different? So what would OSAP be, and what would the National Student Loan Service Center be?
So OSAP is the Ontario Student Assistance Program. That is the one funded by the federal and the provincial government to assist you financially while you're in school. While the National Student Loan Service Center, they are the one that collects the payment from you and also provide you information how much loan you have and all the other details like interest on your loans and when you should start paying.
Gotcha. So when a student applies to get financial aid, they're going to be applying to OSAP, and then when they are in repayment status, it moves over to the National Student
That's
Loan
correct.
Service Center.
Yeah.
So just so they're not confused or anything like
Yeah.
that. So we don't have a whole lot of time left, JP. I really wanted to thank you because you've answered some really great questions. If students have any further questions, I highly encourage you to visit or email the website or the email address listed, so myfuture@centennialcollege.ca. We're always here to help. Or feel free to come to campus, come to one of our open house events, sit down, chat with financial aid. They've got some great information. Self-advocacy, I find, is one of the biggest things when it comes to paying for school. You have to reach out. Nobody's going to do it for you. So please, if you have questions, reach out and ask them as soon as possible. We want to make sure that you get your answers as soon as possible. And thanks again so much for coming in tonight. Appreciate it.
Think of a place you want to be, a place you belong. It's a step up, a step forward, a statement, a strategy. It's where dreams take flight, where the fire burns hot, more than 50 years strong but built for today. Focus on the horizon of tomorrow. Inclusion, equity, citizenship, the real world and our world. We think harder, reach higher, live local, study global. We unlock doors and change the direction of our minds. Education without borders, global citizenship, equity, and social inclusion are the values. From hundreds of cultures and 80 languages, we stand together, focused on a stronger future. We live to laugh, we love to play. We rise with the sun and reach for the stars. From court case to aerospace, searching and researching. We break the mold and find a better way. It's a commitment to ourselves and a promise to others. Centennial, you belong.